Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Dr. Scott with the Full Body Fix. Hey, what we're going to do today is cover part one of Anterior Pelvic Tilt Fix. So we're going to just show basically 5 exercises really quickly to start to address the anterior pelvic tilt from a neurologic perspective, mostly looking to activate the glutes and activate the lower abs. This tends to be the biggest problem. So an anterior pelvic tilt, what we're talking about is if you feel kind of where the bones are here in the front of the hip and then also in the very base of your waistband back here, anterior pelvic tilt would be this motion. So with the pelvis basically dropped low in the front and high in the back, causes a lot of pressure in the lower back. And this can be from a number of different reasons. I see it as a congenital thing where people are just kind of born that way and it sort of develops for whatever reason, idiopathically, unknown. And then acquired, which I do tend to see this more in females, especially in folks who trained early in their life as a gymnast or in cheerleading or in figure skating, where that hyperlordosis is sort of emphasized. And then also acquired just because of postural issues and the way we interact with our environment over the course of development. So no matter what the reason, the one thing that we do tend to see a lot is basically that position. You have definitely tight or short lower back muscles, stretch weakened lower abdominal muscles, and inactive glutes. So the question is, what do you start with? A lot of times if you look this up, people will say to stretch the low back, stretch the hamstring, stretch the hip flexor. My take is a little more on the neurologic side. We want to activate things first. So I'm going to do that today. In today's video, we're going to do a couple different ways to activate the glutes and lower abs and start to correct this anterior pelvic tilt. So exercise 1 for activating the glutes is going to be a glute bridge. I've showed this on the channel before, but we'll cover it real quick. Feet flat on the floor. And the big thing with, especially with anterior pelvic tilt, is a lot of times if you guys have this significantly, you'll actually have a big gap in your low back, even laying flat on the floor. And I want you to actually posterior pelvic tilt a little bit. So rock the pelvis back so that the back is flat, and that'll help start triggering that neurologic response, saying, oh, okay, the body's going to recognize, hey, that's a new position. Are we training this position? Yeah, we are. So we're going to go ahead and squeeze the glute so that we're bringing the pelvis up off the floor till we're level. You can do that maybe 10 times. If you're feeling it more in the hamstrings, maybe bring the heels back a little bit closer and really try to focus on pressing down through the heels by squeezing the glutes or the butt together. If that's too easy, you're not really feeling it, you can do single leg as well. Next is going to be a banded, sort of it's called a stirrup sit-up. So I'm going to actually put my heels in a band attached to the rig. And what this is going to do is actually I'm going to fire my hamstrings a little bit, which is going to neurologically inhibit the hip flexors, which is what we want. Because when I'm doing lower abdominal crunches, I don't want the hip flexor to fire. I want it to be relaxed. So I'm going to put a little bit of tension on that band by contracting the hamstring. I'm going to flatten the low back down against as well. And now we're targeting that lower ab. All you have to do is a little bit of a roll-up crunch. You're going to feel that really, really firmly right in the abdominals. And it's really cool. You won't feel it in the hip flexors at all. And you can get 5 or 10 of these without cramping. That's a great thing. So that's a good 1-2 punch while you're on your back. The glute bridge for the activating the glutes, and then the stirrup sit-up for the lower abs. Next one we're going to do for the lower abs is a no gap leg lower, and it's again a really good way just to kind of train our core muscles to sense a new position. So I'm going to go back on my back, I'm gonna flatten that back against the floor by tilting back posteriorly. Bring into hips into flexion at 90 degrees, kind of like a dead bug position, but we're not going to bother with our hands. I'm going to lower the legs slowly and try to feel everything in the abs contract here. Now, of course, you are using a little bit of the hip flexor doing this. Can't avoid that. But if you keep the pelvis posteriorly tilted and the low back pressed into the floor, while you do that, you'll actually feel more of a contraction in the abs. I can feel that quite a bit there, and that's a really good trigger for a neurologic response of getting those lower abs to fire. You can cycle through that about 10 times each leg. Okay, the other way we're going to do glute activation is with a step squat, a sliding step squat. So every time I step, I'm going to also squat, come back to standing position, squat into that band. That's going to fire kind of a little bit more of the glute med, the lateral stabilizer glute. Do that about 10 times each direction. All right, the last glute activation drills, you do need a little bit of a weight. You can start pretty light, maybe 10, 15 pounds tops. We're going to do sort of a one-legged deadlift with a little bit of a stagger lunge. And the whole key to this is, again, starting in posture neutral. So if you have this hyperlordosis or anterior pelvic tilt, what I want you to do is squeeze the butt, screw the feet into the ground, and then pick up the weight. Step forward with one leg, keeping that neutral posture, leaning down, tapping the kettlebell or dumbbell, and coming straight back up, squeezing that glute. Sort of like a single leg deadlift, which you may have seen something like that. We're going to keep the opposite foot on the floor, but kind of quiet. What I'm really focusing on here is trying to keep everything neutral in that low back. Trying to keep that arch away, and in the meantime, we're actually strengthening the glute by doing that in that position. Do that on both sides, obviously. Cycle through that maybe 2 to 3 sets of 10 repetitions. So that's part 1 of the anterior pelvic tilt fix. Come back and check out the next video, part 2, where we'll address those tight low back muscles and hip flexors. It's been Dr. Scott with Full Body Fix. See you next time.